Welcome everyone to our webinar on mastering employee data with an HRIS. Today we'll be talking on how to improve your operational efficiency. So just a couple welcome items. As you can see, you have a control panel on your screen. Please utilize the chat section to send comments and questions throughout. At the end, we will have a Q&A session with our experts. So feel free to submit those throughout when you have questions or comments or want to share any best practices or things you have learned throughout the session. Again, if you have issues with audio, feel free to use the audio drop-down. You can either select computer or call in with your phone to be able to hear. And then lastly, just a reminder that we always send out recordings and presentation slides the following day. So look for that in your email inbox tomorrow. All right, let's go ahead and introduce our panelists today. First, we have Reed Walsh. She is our Chief of Human Resources here at NEOGOV. However, before NEOGOV, she was the former Deputy Secretary of Human Resources and Management for the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. There, she was managing about 900 HR employees and was covering the needs of about 72,000 state employees. So we are super excited to have her with us to share her thought leadership. And then we have Chris Gray. He is an HRIS sales engineer here at NEOGOV. He used to be an implementation consultant, so you may or may not have worked with him in the past. But we are also excited to have his subject matter expertise on the line with us again. So yeah, welcome. We're so excited, and I'm going to pass it over to Reed.
Hi, everybody. It's great to be here. Especially glad to be here with Chris. I could have used a Chris in my life. Those years I was working in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. As Vanessa said, I'm really just 5 short months from making the leap from public sector HR to NEOGOV to continue my HR career. So not long ago, I was in your seats, and frankly, still am in your seat, thinking about continual improvement, how to tighten up the operations, and I think one of the things I always had at the forefront of that is, how do I do that with the least amount of disruption and positive reaction for the employees? You're always thinking about your employees in HR because you know how hard they work, especially in the public sector, and a lot of the pressures we've been under. So thinking about how process improvement can positively impact them too. So I'm anxious to get into that with you all today. So let's get a look at our agenda. First, we'll start out by looking at the current landscape in public sector HR. We're going to look at some data to help talk about operational efficiency today. Then we're going to look at the demand in government for process automation. I think everybody's looking to automate processes, and certainly the government is the same in that. Then we're going to dive into the meat of our webinar today, which is the best practices for managing employee information. And then what I always found to be helpful, and still do, I was going through the slides today and thinking what a great reminder of tips to actually get started when you're beginning the journey. So let's get going. All right, the importance of operational efficiency. So recently, NEOGOV surveyed about 700 plus HR professionals and helped them and asked them to identify their scarcest resource. So obviously you can see the responses on the screen, but I don't think it's shocking to anybody that people and money were the top 2 identified scarcest resources. People coming in at 41%, followed by money at 28%. I think we all feel this people scarcity in different ways. I think internally to our own HR staff, definitely externally to applicants, but people being the scarcest resources is huge. Double down on that, how low the unemployment rates are and how much that makes it harder to recruit. One of the places where I saw this impact me when I was working for the Commonwealth is when I think about the outward facing, the candidate pools and those being scarce resources, places where we used to have full candidate pools, we never worried about it. It was just really a matter of, doing the processing for those employees were going away. I think about our corrections officers where we would see just less applicants, our state police force. Certainly we're seeing a decline in some of those spaces and places you never really had to worry about per se before. They kind of hired for themselves, and now we're in a different world and we're thinking about different things. So let's explore why these resources are so scarce. Okay, so look at that statistic on eminent retirees 55 plus. You can see that's going up dramatically. We've probably all been feeling that personally in our working worlds. And then you can look at the amount of people that are entering the workforce from ages 16 to 24. So really we are at a confluence of events. I feel like as a HR professional, the word silver tsunami or, mass retirements were, we've been talking about it for a long time. I frankly felt like it never really hit, but then when I think about the statistic that by 2030, so less than 7 years away, all the baby boomers will be age 65 plus, and the population of people trying to enter the workforce will not be able to make up for all those retirees. So that's a real black and white number, and it's a little bit shocking, and just helps us to understand the importance of getting our roadmaps down about how we're going to handle that scarcity of resources. So we're all preparing for this reality. It may seem like it's a recruitment and retention challenge, but again, the underlying resource is really scarcity of resources. So the real question is, how do we deal with it? All right, so operational efficiency. Operational efficiency is the solution to scarcity of resources. So it's people, process, technology coming together. It's your agency's ability to deliver high quality services with less people and less money. I think we can all identify with that. It's a combination of people management, process management, technology. And while improving all three of those is ideal, addressing any one of those factors is really going to have a ripple effect, and they're all interconnected. So an essential part of operational efficiency is reducing waste. So it seems kind of like I'm talking about two different concepts. How can we have scarce resources and then talk about having waste within our environment? But they are one and the same. So let's look at an example of how we can have a scarcity of resources and waste at the same time. So what is waste? So waste is any resource that adds cost without creating value for employees or constituents. So think about time, effort, money, people, technology, anything that we invest in, and the output is just not there. So I'm going to give you a few examples of wasted resources that may resonate with you. Bottlenecks. Your team has bottlenecks. Work has to pass through an employee with exclusive knowledge. We all have those SMEs, or a supervisor who maybe wants to review anything. That's an example of waste. Maybe your team is using outdated processes, manual processes. There's a lot of data entry. There's a lot of routine tasks that are taking up a lot of people resources. It's highly possible that your team's constantly sidetracked, unable to kind of dig into projects or do innovation work because there's so much tactical work. There's so much daily work with answering questions about payroll and benefits and all those things that employees legitimately need the answers to, but it is time consuming for HR professionals and can create waste in your resources. And the other one is your agency may be using multiple HR systems, and some of those systems may not be an application. It may be a sheet, it may be databases that you use. But if you have varied systems and they're not well connected, those are going to create some inefficiencies in your day. So we're curious to tune into you all who are on this webinar to ask you, where do you experience the most waste? So Vanessa is popping up a poll question here. Where does your agency experience the most waste? Now, please feel free to select one. I'm not allowed to vote, so I won't. I'd vote for all of the above. Okay, get those answers in. Time, all of the above. Yeah, absolutely. Time is the absolutely most precious resource. And I think when we think about those definitions of waste, all those things equate to the time spent doing those things, or we could be better using our skills and abilities. So thank you. Thank you for your responses to that. So let's talk a little bit about how automation can reduce some of that time waste. Okay, demand for automation. Okay, as you can see, there's demand for automation in HR. I don't think it's a news story. There's demand for automation anywhere. There's a couple things to sort of keep in mind when you're looking at this. When you think about that next generation of workforce you have coming in, so Gen Zs and millennials, and frankly, our employees, they expect stuff to be automated. So they expect it in their working life, they expect it in our interactions with them. And I think that's gonna, and I frankly think a lot of people that maybe didn't enter the working world with an automated landscape, we've all adopted to that and have certain expectations for that. So that's a big deal. Each of the stats shared here on your screen right now are based on a survey of about 700 plus of you all, of HR professionals in the public sector. And really the results do speak for themselves. So operational efficiency is a priority for you all. Task automation is a priority for you all. And we're going to lean in a little bit to those things in particular to managing employee information. So you can see that's kind of off the charts. 89% of HR pros say they want to automate tasks and processes related to managing employee information. From my personal experience, this really became something that I was very tuned into, especially around the COVID crisis and constantly needing to produce data, produce numbers, so that I could be having conversations with very busy people in leadership roles that were helping to make decisions or supporting the decisions that I was making for the workforce. And having that employee data together, I think, became even more of a, not just a nice to have, but a must have when you're trying to make decisions. So let's take a look at this statistic in more detail. Okay, so 89% of the respondents said they wanted to automate tasks. And this is tasks related to employee information. So think time and attendance, payroll, benefits, core HR, in other words, an end-to-end comprehensive HR solution. We have a full report that goes into all of these details. But for this webinar, we're really going to lean into the managing employee information as it was the largest need. So let's talk a little bit in the next few slides about how HR information systems can help you in this task to optimize your operations. All right, so best practices for managing employee information, and welcome to the show, Chris, and take it away.
Thank you. Appreciate everybody attending. So the first thing we're going to address on our best practices, combine multiple HR systems. So we'll talk about combining multiple HR systems, a problem that creates waste for really any public sector agency. So we start off the bat with that graph on the right-hand side. 68% of government HR professionals struggle to manage multiple HR systems for different reasons. And as you can see, we have outlined about 5 different areas that disparate systems pose as a problem. The first one that you see is they don't integrate with one another. That comes in the form of an API, 834, EDI, whatever the case may be, there is that connectivity issue. The second point there is led to siloed data. So with multiple systems, you have manual reentry constantly. So this is something that you have to enter this information here, transition and enter that information there. That's a lot of wasted time. Third challenge that we have, make big picture reporting difficult. I mean, when you have several systems, you don't have a comprehensive reporting. You have several reports over multiple different areas of services that don't coincide. So you're dealing with a lot of issues with comprehensive reporting. Number 4, multiple logins. I mean, this is a big one that I hear a lot about when I was in the implementation side. Several different logins that you have to manage with multiple different systems. So no single sign-on option presented to help with your employees logging in. And last but certainly not least, Don't integrate with HR or CSM services. So what does that look like? Well, when we talk about HR and CSM solutions, we're talking about talent management items like onboard recruiting. That bit of information or those systems not integrating with your core HR system or whatever that needs to look like. So I want to pass the conch back to Reed here and say, how does this resonate with you, being that you worked in the public sector and dealt with thousands of employees?
Yeah. Chris, what I think about the most is sort of the maniacal focus we had on our IT roadmap. That was really important because, going back to thinking about bottlenecks and single points of dependency, if you have all these different systems, different employees, depending on how they've been interacting and what job they've been doing in HR, kind of maybe the expert here and the expert here, and just that internal training piece across all those systems. So as people can be nimble and stealthy, across your platform, as opposed to being the expert in this, the expert in this. So we have to wait for so-and-so to get back because they're the only one who knows how to pull X, Y, and Z out of the Access database or whatever it may be. So, IT roadmap, and really making the most of your employees and not creating those bottlenecks was huge for me, really internal management.
Right, and it shows that a single integrated HRIS system can really solve a lot of the problems that you have managing multiple systems. So imagine how beneficial and how much time you'll save having integrated services. And we'll talk about the benefits here in a sec. So the benefits of integrated HRIS. This is huge. So when an employee is hired or promoted, the first thing you have to consider is inputting the data once. Well, guess what? With NEOGOV, you do. You input that information into the system. You don't have to worry about rekeying. It significantly reduces that rekeying. You have two systems that communicate with each other, both on the HRIS side and talent management system side. They both coincide, so it's one entry, and then everything else flows over. The second item is avoiding human error. I mean, that's a big one right there. It increases the accuracy of the information you're inputting. Since you don't have to worry about navigating multiple systems, you can rest assured your information is going to be accurate from one system to another. And then use data across the system. So automates integrations, huge piece. We're a big fan of that. The last little bit there is pull data from single source of truth for comprehensive reporting. Our systems collaborate, so when you pull a report, you can rest assured that the information that you're getting considers multiple systems and again provides you a comprehensive report based on the information you have from both sides of the system. And then you can trust the data to be accurate and up to date. That is a huge, huge piece. Nothing's more frustrating when you pull a report and the next thing you know, the information's completely out of date or inaccurate. Reed, I'm sure this has to resonate with you a little bit, again, coming from that public sector area.
Sure. My public sector experience just happened to be that I had a really large workforce, right? 72,000 plus employees. So accuracy of data was huge. Certainly bad system in the data, a fat finger here or there, or missing something, when you're doing adjustments to people's salaries, that can just lead to a lot of work on the back end to solve any problems that may have come up during that, during those times.
Exactly. I love it. Now let's move on to the second best practice, because I think this is going to be incredibly impactful. Implement employee self-service. We'll talk about how employee self-service helps reduce wasted time and effort. And this is something that you probably don't think about, so I'm excited to share it with you. So the first thing you have to consider are the challenges. So I asked this question: are you bogged down with tasks that employees could be doing themselves? What does that look like? Updating contact information, tracking PTO, answering HR policy related questions like what's my direct deposit information, who am I covering under my benefits, and even just adding basic beneficiary information. It's important to modernize. As Reed had pointed out, the old guard is retiring, the new generation's coming in, and the new generation want self-service. This is a technological generation, and so self-service is going to play a big part in getting those employees to do things on their own accord, saving time for HR. There are many benefits to self-service, which we're going to talk about here right now. So for the benefits of employees, the benefits of employee self-service is vast, and I mean extensive. And this is, again, coming from the implementation side. I see the employees' usage and the desire to have that service. The first thing you point out is anytime, anywhere convenience. We have a mobile app that you can utilize. You can utilize that mobile app on a tablet. You can utilize a laptop or a desktop. Go to the library and access your account. Ultimately, you can go anywhere and have the convenience in hand or on a computer. And then, of course, there's always concern about security for mobile devices. Well, guess what? NEOGOV covers you. We have a very robust security system in the background. We also support optical logins, biometrics, fingerprints, and just, of course, normal passwords to make sure that everybody's information is secure. Employees update most of their own information. I mean, I can't, if the panel could talk here, I could probably ask who wants to save time avoiding changing information for employees, and I'm sure all of you would raise your hand, because that's a lot of time that you have to spend updating that information. Well, no longer. They have that ability to do so. And then employee answers their questions. Hey, what's my rate? Who am I covering? What is my address so I can make sure it's accurate? Can I get my W-2? Absolutely. All those questions are answered when you know the employee has access to a self-service module that gives them that flexibility. And this bullet point right here is amazing. Approval workflows to ensure the information is accurate. So instead of giving them the reins and allowing them to lead that horse, you can then watch them lead that horse. When they make that change, you get the notification that says change being made. Is it accurate? And you don't have to worry about them pushing through information willy-nilly. You can have your managers, supervisors, admins observe the information prior to it being pushed. And what does this all encompass? Well, it encompasses a trust and an empowerment in your employees. Nothing works better for an employee or gives them a sense of reliability when you give them trust in having a self-service module. And then lastly, HR focuses on priority tasks. They can work on the benefits. They can work on those FMLA cases or hiring or terminations instead of worrying about those simple changes that employees will have the accessibility of making the change. So let's again, I want to lead on Reed, as you worked in this business, how did this affect you when it came to having a self-service module available for employees?
Yeah, I mean, a couple things that I think at it is, I don't think it's just an expectation. I feel like it's an imperative, because when we think about, our workforces, my experience was 70% of my employees were not in a traditional workspace, right? So, to have that ability to do the things that they needed to do to manage their, their work life, their personal self at work, on the phone is really important. And we had a really big push towards employee self-service. And, I think a lot of people who were dubious because of those approvals, that ability to track the progress and make sure things didn't go through without, and having those gates in place and having managers and everyone understand that that's how the system's going to work is huge. It gives a lot of comfort. And one of the things that we found in the Commonwealth, we did have a call center that was centralized for HR, which was really nice that we had that. But still, it was more than we could handle in terms of demand. So our HR workforce is going down. Didn't have as many people to, staff the call center. Also, people have just different expectations for call centers. I couldn't keep them there 24 hours, but we have crazy schedules when you have veterans homes or, prisons or, shift work. So it really was a necessity. And we saw that people, when we built it, they came and our calls decreased. And honestly, I think the governor's office thought I was fudging the numbers. Our calls decreased by about 40%. People were taking the option to do things themselves. We were spending less time on the phones, so we were able to answer more calls and do more things. And we really saw that they were taking advantage of that. And one of the things that kind of was the unexpected benefit of doing that is, what I really like is, in your self-service environment, there's a little carousel, a little portal. I was always challenging myself with, how do I get the employees to do the things that we need them to do, but also make them aware of the things that would be good for them to do, or benefits they may have not thought about in a little bit when it came to zero copays for telehealth, if that was what was going on, or the ability to use, X, Y, and Z service for free as a part of their benefits package. So I have the ability, as they were coming in to do these services they really wanted to check their pay stub, wanted to do X, Y, or Z, I could also say, and did you forget that this is coming up? And sometimes it's like, management needs to do their financial disclosures, or it's, one of those, more fun benefits, like don't forget we have pet insurance, some of those things. So what I found was it really quickly became this place where employees were looking for information, and that gave me the ability to think about that vast, diverse workforce and how I can push messages to them all.
I love it. And that's fantastic. And what it sounds to me like is you gave this accessibility to your employees, trusting that they would make the correct changes, trusting that they would check those notifications to better understand what events are coming up or what have you. And that leads me to the trust. And it's amazing what happens when you have that trust in your employees. And this is why it's important. The benefits of employees feeling trusted. So most employees don't want to bother HR. They prefer making changes themselves. This is a statistic that we've seen. This is a preference that they have. I don't want to go to the HR office. I want to be able to do these things myself. And if employees aren't empowered to do so, I mean, it can lead to mistrust. Mistrust leads to, less productivity, call-ins, those kinds of things. You want to be able to trust the company you're working with. And then, of course, according to SHRM, there are many benefits to employees feeling trusted. And this is where we bring up this chart. As you can see right off the bat, 50% more productivity when an employee feels trusted. I'm sure all of us could benefit from that, even on a personal level. More energized. I mean, energy drink companies would be so upset if they saw this stat, because they're more energized when they have a trust in their company. And then last but not least, sick less often. You get those individuals in more often. 13% sick less often means more productivity. That kind of rolls into that productivity. It's a huge benefit to have that trust for your employees. Now, outside of the employee self-service module, we also have another big piece to the pie. So we're going to go to our final, which is simplifying payroll compliance. And I know I got your attention now, because I know simplifying the payroll compliance is going to be a big piece to everyone's business, because let's be honest, it is probably your biggest part of the business. So here's some challenges that we see. Various departments. So based on what we have seen, of course, in the public sector, you have various departments amongst your entity. Everything from parks and recreations to water, street, police, fire, you name it, you probably have it. And every one of those in the public sector have various department efficiencies or items that they are specific to that particular department, such as regulations, pay grades, pay rates, overtime rules, timesheets, benefits. The list goes on. These right there can complicate a payroll significantly. So again, I lean on Reed. How does this resonate with you, being that you are in that public sector piece?
Yeah, I think no matter what we are doing, the question was, can they handle our complexity? So 21 different unions, we were a unionized environment in the Commonwealth. You do so much work to settle on your compensation structures. In some cases, if you have them, to negotiate for certain things. And, it's complex, and you want it to just run, because you do payroll very often, and nothing is more can take you off track for a week, a month, days at a time, than having some payroll errors. So yeah, this is a very big part of it. This sort of thing, to be able to handle the complexity of payroll requirements, is sort of the unsung hero of HR systems, in my opinion.
Exactly. And I mean, let's talk about the benefits of simplifying a payroll compliance. I mean, because the list probably goes on and on, but we'll go over a few bullet points. So an integrated HRIS can help you maintain compliance with complexity on payrolls and time. So what does that look like? HRIS, our services, feature an automation that will simplify payroll compliance and save you time. How? Well, let's ask. Or let's go over those bullet points. Calculate payroll retroactively based on FLSA rules and regulations. Calculate overtime based on FMLA, work rules, and time rules. Prorate compensation based on time off, employee status, etc. Ensure the right hours have been paid at a correct blended rate. That's the big one right there, blended rate. Run employee wage and hourly timesheet computation. Share benefit statements, 834 files, or what have you, with insurance providers. Easily add, remove, or update an employee's enrollment information. And then, of course, big one, separate union payroll management. That's a huge one. Being an implementation, I can tell you those separate union payroll opportunities are huge. The best part about everything that I have gone through with you, we all support it. Everything is supported by NEOGOV. We can do every single one of these bullet points and support your payroll exactly as it is outlined in these bullet points. Now, as we looked at the 3 best practices, the question I want you to ask yourself is, what do you think is what should be implemented first and foremost? Well, guess what? We're going to find out. Our friend Vanessa here is going to provide a poll question. Which of these best practices do you want to implement first, from combined multi-HRIS systems all the way down to all the above? We'll give you a few seconds here to answer away. All right. And let's see here, all the above. I had a feeling all the above would be the lead answer, but then of course, what I like to see is the combine multiple HR systems into a single integrated system. Again, it saves you all that time, so I completely understand, but I also understand all the above because, come on, we just want full efficiency across the board. Now, so what we're going to do here is we're going to, when it comes to implementing new processes, it can be a daunting thing to do. So keep your answers to yourself while we go over how you get started in this process. So tips for getting started. The first thing we're going to talk about is audit current operations. So what does that mean? You may already be aware of some operational hiccups that you're probably experiencing within your agency. Audit and measure those to validate your assumptions. This way, you know exactly what you're setting yourself up for. Prioritize projects. Based on your audit, which operations are least efficient? For example, if your HR team is maybe understaffed, using outdated or disparate systems, self-managing employee data, you may want to consider reprioritizing. Review technological solutions. So review technology solutions, explore technology solutions where they're built for the need of the public sector HR. Estimate your ROI or your VOI, which is value of investment, on the top solutions. This estimate in conjunction with benchmark data will be added to your business care. And then create, yes.
Oh, I was going to say, I'm just so excited to talk about this. I was going to jump in, but this really resonates with me because I think about, all these things you're talking about, like creating the business case. And it's I feel like in government, we have a tendency to rely on that anecdotal information, right? And, and for the most part, I like to think that, we have relationships with our colleagues as we're making decisions, they trust us. If we say there's an issue, we need to rectify it, we're leaders in our field, they trust us to do that. But I think we all want to make good investments and really pressure test what's going on in our environment, right? And we definitely, it not only helps us to make that business case and to get that buy-in, but like for me, it was also like, am I pushing on the right things? Am I doing the right things that are going to really help make that change? And so going through and auditing it, prioritizing, it really helped me to have a sense of, I know I'm going to cause disruption with this. It's a necessary disruption. I want to feel really secure in all those things that I'm doing, and where we can see those really kind of levers that'll just make those changes that just open up things dramatically. When you think about that project prioritization, maybe it's low-hanging fruit, maybe it's something that's just kind of been your the thorn in your side for a really long time. So sorry to jump in, Chris, just got excited about planning.
No, you're good. I love it. And then of course, create a business case, which was justifying your operations improvement plans for formal documents. Data from reports as well as audits is a good standing point. I mean, clearly objectives can occur, but make sure those are observable and measurable. And Reed, let's have you continue to jump on in. So let's handle the rest of those bullet points.
Yeah, I mean, I would say that one of the things that I really relied on is having those conversations with the vendors, right? Because, their experience is so broad and they may be seeing things that, that you're not seeing. So, kind of those conversations with the vendors, what resonates with me, do they have any materials they can help me, that'll help me work through stuff? So rely on that, that was huge for me. And then of course, getting the buy-in, managing implementation and change, this this is one that just takes a lot of patience because everybody's going into it knowing things are going to change. And I think our job as HR leaders is to allow for that, you know, to let employees come in feeling like their shoulders are here and they're relaxed and we're all in this together, as opposed to like, oh my gosh, the change is coming. And everyone reacts to change differently. But, you know, find those people who will be the cheerleaders, be the buy-in. You know, I can think of people right now that are, you know, that I'm thinking about in our environment. And frankly, when we were making changes to our applicant tracking system in NEOGOV, you know, I had those champions, I had those people, and, you know, and I would call them like, what's going on? How are people feeling about this? You know, it was my credibility at, you know, different levels as opposed to this, you know, the deputy secretary role. And that really, I think, helps a lot with getting that buy-in, getting that change. And, you know, oh, look, so-and-so's innovating beside me. Like, yeah, I can do that too. You know, let's jump in on that together. So, you know, I think everything is a total of your kind of your micro movements, you know. So, you know, me calling the certain people to say, hey, what's going on? What's the feel? What are people struggling with? How do we make it better? You know, just taking those things, you know, the small pieces at a time to making the whole better is, you know, just start. You just got to get started.
I love it. I love it. So from here, we're going to move on to our resources. So here are all of our resources. So these are going to be very helpful for you. If you'd like to learn more, including the reports that are based off this webinar, we'll provide you all of these resources. And as just a reminder, tomorrow you will be receiving an email with the link to this webinar, to this presentation, and a copy of the presentation slide. Now, in this remaining time, we would like to open it up to you for any questions that you would have for myself or Reed. Yeah, let's go ahead and jump into some questions.
Awesome. Yeah, let's go ahead and jump in. Pull up first question. Let's go ahead and give this one to Chris. But for agencies that currently have multiple systems, how would you recommend phasing out of those old systems in order to move towards something more integrated?
That is a great question, and probably one of a very common question that we get from clients that are coming over. So the first thing you do is gather any necessary data. So if you're phasing out an HR system that you are no longer going to be using and bringing over to NEOGOV, gather everything that you would need. And ask your question. Ask this question: am I going to need specs? Am I going to need personal employee data, rates, divisions, org chart information? Go in there and make sure you gather all of that information, because it's there. It's there. So why not take advantage? The more information, the better, because if you don't need it, it just sits in a file and you don't need it. But otherwise, you know it's there in case NEOGOV needs to use that information to further implement. It'll make the implementation a lot easier knowing that, yeah, you have that information on hand. So that would be the biggest focus. And then the other thing is communicate with your old system. Understand that, yes, you know, people move from company to company sometime, or they'll transition to another service. Don't get caught in the middle of paying for one service when you're implementing another. You know, continue to maintain that relationship, but let them know, hey, eventually I'm going to be moving out. That way you can start game planning with them on how you're going to phase out of their system. Because again, you don't want to be caught when you're fully implemented paying for two services when you only want to pay for one.
Awesome. Cool. Another question we have, which there might be several answers for this, but how does NEOGOV's HRIS specifically have unique features for the public sector?
Yeah, that is I can answer that question all day. I think what time is it? It's 11. Yeah, I don't know if I have enough time in the day to answer that, but let me give you a couple snippets. So if you remember in our slide, the first thing that we focus on is, again, the capacity to focus payroll on separation of union and those types of items. Also, how we calculate payrolls. You're looking at things like premiums. We know a lot of providers out there utilize a premium. Well, we support those things. Odd calculations for pensions and those items, we support those. FLSA rules for, you know, public safety. Those are a big one right there. We're coming out with new and improved services for time and attendance, but right now we support multiple facets of time rules for different departments, however that's going to look, that specifically support the public sector. When NEOGOV started implementation, the public sector was in mind. So everything that we have is focused on public sector. That's what we're here to do. So those are just a couple of small things that I can answer that help support. But then it's, of course, we talk about the talent management side, the recruiting pieces, the onboarding pieces that are specific to those public sector agencies. I mean, again, the answer is so vast, but again, when NEOGOV came to fruition, we thought of public sector first and foremost.
Awesome. And then we have another question. They said, we're interested in simplifying our payroll compliance. How can I get more information about that?
Great question. So we have documentation or sales representatives that would actually be available to speak to that can actually give you some good in-depth information. As a sales engineer, my job is to show you what the payroll compliance systems can do and how to make your system compliant with our payroll module. But we have plenty of sales representatives in your area that will be able to actually talk to you, address, and even show you what it can do to help integrate or supplement what your needs are for payroll.
Awesome. Let's go ahead and do this final question. This one said, can we integrate various websites HR uses when onboarding, such as DMV, other benefits, other websites, etc.?
So here's some great news. You can actually include links in those in your services. So do we directly integrate with websites? Not necessarily. We will do integrations with other services using APIs and EDIs and such, but direct websites, it just depends on the website. But like I said, when it comes to the services, when you have items like websites that you have links to, you can actually bring those links into things like your self-service and whatnot that make it available for your employees to select and navigate easily. So we can definitely make it work for you. We're very customizable, and we have a lot of openness to what options we have for those types of that type of accessibility with websites. So short answer is we can certainly look into it. We have ways of supporting that definitely.
Awesome. And then I guess one other quick question, Chris, if you know this off the top of your head, great. If not, no worries. But someone asked if there's a chance of PeopleSoft and NEOGOV being integrated.
So PeopleSoft, yes, as a matter of fact, we have integrated with PeopleSoft. We can do that through I believe an API feed, depending on the information you want. But the other thing is we can also do items like you provide us a spec, we'll create a report for you to also upload. So there's several facets of this integration that we can actually support. So short answer, yeah, we can absolutely do that.
Awesome. Yeah, thank you so much. I think that is it for our questions. If you have any additional questions, you want to know more about HRIS or specific features that we talked about in this webinar, please feel free to reach out to us. In our follow-up email, we will have the ability for you to schedule a consultation with our team. So look forward to that. Just to close things out, we want to thank Reed and Chris for their expertise and joining us for this webinar. Again, thank you all for spending time with us during your busy days to get some tips out of how to improve your operational efficiency. So until next time, thank you guys so much for joining, and we'll see you later.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye, y'all.